have I ever got an amazing woman who is both a rabbi and a cantor for you. Her name is Judy Greenfeld, and she is an ordained rabbi, a cantor, a spiritual mentor. She's going to teach you all about what is the Kabbalah. She's gotten into this very advanced form of seeing spirituality. She talks about what it was like to lose her father to gun violence when she was a teenager, and how that put Judy on a lifelong path of healing and spiritual exploration. So I can't invite you more enough to join me for this conversation. She's wonderful. Hi there, and welcome to the Grief and Rebirth podcast. I'm your host, author and trauma survivor Irene Weinberg, here to encourage you wherever you are in your healing journey. In each episode, I chat with incredible grief and trauma specialists, healers, mediums, and celebs, as well as remarkable people who have inspiring healing stories to share. If you're looking for a podcast that's both uplifting and inspiring, you've found it. Let us help you find your joy in life. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds each of you so very well. I'm speaking to you from my studio in West Orange, New Jersey, and I could not be more delighted to have the pleasure of interviewing Rabbi Judy Greenfeld, who is not only a lifelong entrepreneur, a published author, an ordained rabbi, and a cantor. Judy is also an inclusive spiritual mentor who guides people to embrace their past and discover their full potential. When she was just 16 years old, Judy tragically lost her father to gun violence. That traumatic, profound experience ignited a lifelong journey of healing and spiritual exploration for Judy, which included years of study and practice in somatic dance, dream work, meditation, sound healing, Reiki, and Kabbalah. Judy developed a unique healing approach to personal and communal transformation that empowers global communities through the synergy of wellness and personal growth. She now serves as the Senior Rabbi and Cantor at Beth Israel Synagogue in Colleyville, Texas. And beyond her rabbinical duties, Judy cultivates welcoming, inclusive spaces where people of all backgrounds can come together, find support, and explore a path of self-discovery and shared purpose. I'm looking forward to talking with Judy, whose work has been featured in Medium, the LA Times, the LA Daily News, and Women's Day, amongst others, about her tragic experience navigating gun violence as a teenager, her enlightened insights about why bad things happen to good people and forgiveness, the ways we can turn chaos into calm, the holistic approach to releasing anxiety and depression, how we can alchemize our everyday challenges for our highest growth, and more, for what is surely going to be an illuminating, wisdom-filled interview. Hi, Judy. A warm, heartfelt welcome to Grief and Rebirth podcast.
Thank you. I couldn't be happier to be here and to speak with you today and your beautiful following that I've heard so much about. I know that our goal and my prayer before we began was that we touch at least one person today and bring them maybe out of a funk, let them give them some hope, fill them with hope, the hope that has moved us to where we are today.
I'm thrilled to have you here. And I know one of the things, and people will listen towards the end of the interview, is that you're offering something in the way of a discovery call or a session with you, which I have no doubt there are people listening today who might want to make that call to you and chat with you for your tremendous wisdom and what you do. So let's start, as they say, begin the beginning by talking about your experience tragically losing your father to gun violence. How terrible. And how did that lead you to explore spiritual and psychological paths in the hope of healing? Tell us about your childhood there, kid.
Yeah, it's a long way back. 16 is a very vulnerable age. And I remember looking back and thinking I was grown up already. Like at least I had what's so interesting is when tragedy hits, it's like this, you can worry about tragedy, but when you're in it, or at least when I was in it, a voice comes to you, a warm feeling came into my body that said, you're going to be okay. You expressed that and I felt that too. And I never have forgotten that. I don't know if it was a reach from the other side. I call it God, I call it higher wisdom, but I was cooned in that. So I do want to say that as painful as it was, I don't think that I had quite had the perspective of what really happened till much later. I'm the youngest of five, and my
Wow.
mother was there when it happened. She's 96, God bless her. And just even in the last, couple of years, we've all gotten together with our children and her grandchildren, and we have a really large family to explore how all five of us really navigated this, and all in very different ways. Now, and I guess that's just who you are. What that did for me is it expanded my consciousness to wonder if this was all there is. Is this just life? You get up in the morning, you have parents, you live in a suburb, you go to school. I mean, what that did for me was to say, I know now. And I wasn't afraid. There's a whole other side, a whole other dimension, a whole other aspect of life that I'm now going to understand.
Can I ask you, Judy, how did that gun violence happen to your dad?
My parents were going to see a play in downtown Cleveland, and they were going to their car, and they were held up by three black kids who had just angry at white, and he was held up with a sawed-off shotgun, and they were being robbed. But I don't know, one of the kids, the gun went off, and my father died. Like in that moment, my mother was holding him,
Your poor mother. Oh my God.
who also became a grief therapist later.
Oh, wow.
Went back to school, became a grief therapist, didn't quite have the experiences that you had, Irene. However, she was totally open to them because in my experience, she was always open to what I was experiencing. And so, I think from her, I learned one of the most important lessons that Judaism teaches, and that through resilience, turning around what's happened to you to make it your strength rather than your weakness, that you really are put on this planet another human being. Because you could get a PhD and a doctorate and all of that in grief, but unless you've gone through it, you can't really teach it or take somebody to their next level. It's really something that when you have a client, they want to know you've walked in the slop you feel that they're walking in.
And I want to comment about how fortunate you are to have a mother who was so open-minded and such a wonderful role model for what she went through, instead of shrinking and going to some kind of swamp where that became the drama for the rest of her life.
Oh boy.
She opened and she grew from it, which is
Huge.
so amazing and that huge.
It's huge. And imagine even this was in the 70s, right? So this is when it was like a woman it happened in 75. This was new to women, right? Just going into the ability into the psychology field, to do what she did. And, Irene, you're like her in that way, a lot younger. Yes, I think that I have learned, well, what do you do with this? Because it places you in a very hopeless position. It's very lonely. You don't think anybody understands. It takes you out of real, life as it's going on. You almost feel like this outsider watching life go by.
True.
And you're thinking, even getting jealous of people who have their fathers, who have happy lives. How come it didn't happen to them? And this opens this chasm in your life that you must fill and maybe again, that is what you come into this lifetime with. I'm a true believer in that we all have purpose. And I think that tragedy does define some of our purpose. And even the Jewish people as a whole probably carry the most resilience of any group of people that I've ever seen. So I think in our DNA, we come from that kind of mentality that I have leaned on as I've gone through different tragedies later in life, because life is always going to give you some kind of trauma or tragedy or that you have to navigate. And as a result, each time you navigate it, you realize that our life is filled with that. And probably the reason I went into the field that I did was I realized it's also one of the most beautiful moments to meet another human being, because they are vulnerable and because they're open and because they are more expanded. It's a joy to be with people at those times.
I would think the people in your congregation are very fortunate to have you in your lives, really. What a blessing. So speaking of blessings, could you explain, because I know you studied Kabbalah and there are a lot of people here. I know that even Madonna studied Kabbalah. So there are a lot of people like, what is Kabbalah? And can you explain about it and how your study of Kabbalah helped you in your life and helped you to develop with what you went through and helped you develop this unique approach you have to personal and communal transformation?
I think I just mentioned something that is what one of the pieces that I can expand on, because Kabbalah and mysticism.
Sorry, I pronounced it wrong. It's Kabbalah.
Well, in Hebrew, there's the accent is on the last syllable, just like Torah, Kabbalah. But of course, we're in America, so we say Kabbalah. And there's also a Kabbalah that starts with a Q, Kabbalah, because it's not just unique to the Jewish people, although the Kabbalah means to receive. It means to receive. So you ask what it is. I wrote 2 books with a co-author, Tamar Frankel, and about body, mind, and soul. And I didn't see the things that Kabbalah teaches written in, or I'd never heard the rabbis talk about it. And the reason why is because supposedly you had to be 40 years old and you had to
talk about the patriarchy.
Right. Had to be a man and you had to be 40 years old. I mean, there were all these contingencies, and that was the best part of Judaism, this part, the spiritual part. So when I started studying it, I was 40, I was pregnant. I mean, I broke all the rules and brought some light into it to take off the, I don't know, kind of the witchiness of what it was about. Because Kabbalah is understanding that we are energy. And in my book, I mean, I even have a picture of it I can show you, is that it's about energy centers.
Oh, wow. It looks sort of like the chakra centers.
Exactly. And what it is this is the Jewish chakra center. So if I were to take a X-ray of my soul, that's what it looks like.
Wow.
Because your soul is energy. And each one of those little balls of light create like a triangle. Like this part is for wisdom, for your heart, for emotion, and the lower obviously is for your more animal instinct, and the one at your feet is what you manifest into the world. So Kabbalah teaches us that we are not just this physical, we are dense. This is a spiritual, physical.
I call this our bodysuits.
This is our bodysuits, and it's a manifestation. So, I earlier in my lifetime was involved in, I was a dancer. And so I knew the physical body and the circulatory and the muscular and all that. But this is even deeper than that. And it is our soul. And so what is the soul? The soul is the energetic part of ourselves that sometimes when somebody will say something, you'll feel your skin, like, or the hair on your skin, just like your skin.
Tingle.
Feel it tingle, right? Or you all of a sudden you hear something, your heart opens and you begin to cry. That is your soul moving through you. But even more so, I have people say, well, I don't understand, Rabbi, what's a soul? And the soul is it's not something that is rational for us, but it's something deep that we feel. And Judaism says that when we breathe, the name for breath is the same as it is for soul. So there's this little mini teaching in that, is that if you think to yourself, well, I don't feel my soul, breathe, because the breath is the last thing that leaves you when you die. And it's the first thing that God breathed life into Adam and Eve. God breathes life into us. That's the first thing when a baby is born, it cries and it breathes. On another level, the soul being energetic, points of the energetic points in our system, it helps to teach us that we are incarnated into this physical body in order to find what our true selves are, to find out. Each one of us comes into this lifetime with a purpose, and through energetic meditation and understanding and going above everyday life, knowing that we are a soul, that we are much more than just what we go through in this physical world, in the linear world, that we have a bigger purpose. So when you look at suffering, and I'm teaching this and explaining to you through a lens that is spiritual and kind of on a higher level, but it transcends our ego. And in Judaism, it is connected to God because God transcends our ego. So that higher self is always at work because it's the thing that inside of you says, this doesn't feel right. I don't like just going to work and making money and going home, or I need more. That's a positive thing in your life. Yearns. and we all yearn. It doesn't mean that you're not satisfied. You yearn to understand what this lifetime is about, who you are. And Kabbalah is a kind of a mirror that will reflect to you what you feel, that your soul is filled with values and with wisdom, and that doesn't just come from a book. That is really the wisdom that is in every artery of your body, because we are born with wisdom.
And isn't it true that Kabbalah teaches about past lives or believes in that? So when we're talking about the wisdom that our soul has, it's also coming from our past life experiences and what we've picked up, the lessons we've picked up along each of those ways, correct?
Well, there's this belief that there's 7 heavens, and that we keep coming back to these lifetimes if we've not achieved and discovered our soul purpose. Now, I don't want that to sound like New Age. I really am trying to what I went back to school to find out if it was true. Because I went back and I was in seminary for almost 10 years. I started by becoming a cantor through sound and music and was ordained, and then started a congregation, and that congregation grew from 10 to over 100. And I had about 300 people, 100 families and family units. But when I went back to seminary to become a rabbi, I wanted to find out where this was said and is it true? And these books are real, and they happened at different times in history. You have commentary of the Talmud that talks about it. Those are our law books. Those are, when we go look at the Constitution, you have law books and experiences of where they came from. Like you were mentioning Roe versus Wade, that was trial, and everything that's in the Torah was put into trial and fought about, so that in every 100 years, some of the laws changed because they didn't work anymore. In these 7 lifetimes, we're learning, because life is a curriculum, and we're constantly learning about ourselves. The one experience I had with these lifetimes, well, 7 obviously is also a numerical,
Right?
right?
Right.
And in Judaism, there's numerology, and it's called gematria. So 7 means creation. So just hold that thought. I went to a funeral where this rabbi, who was not particularly spiritual, had to contend with the loss of a baby. And to see that tiny casket was just heart-wrenching. But what he said stuck with me for the rest of my life. And he said, we believe in 7 heavens. And that child may have been born into this lifetime for just a couple of hours because they completed. That was so soothing for me. I don't know if it was for anybody else, but I thought, wow. I mean, my hair stood up on my arms, and I thought, oh, we get to complete. And our suffering brings us, it actually opens us. We don't have a suffering religion. Our lives will have suffering in it. Even if everything seems perfect, there's suffering. And to be prepared, frame it in a way that you can learn from and not get stuck in a loop. Truly what we are taught and what's the most important.
What is the ultimate goal once a person reaches those 7 levels? What is the ultimate? To evolve and to then you stay on the other side? Or is there a goal? What is the teaching about that?
There's a beautiful prayer we say every morning that supports all of this. And the prayer, Elohai Neshama, it says, God, thank you for creating the soul in me. You breathed it in me. You keep it in me through my lifetime. And you will take it when I'm finished. Nissan Mindell, who writes about prayer, incredible teacher, teaches that when the soul leaves the body, it goes back to source. So just from a purely rational standpoint, let's imagine that there's this big ball of energy that we can't even imagine. And that little piece of godliness comes down and it comes into our bodies and grows because it has something to learn. And when it's finished, it goes back to source. Now, if God is the all and the everything, well, yeah, that makes sense, because every soul that's lived in a body goes back and tells the story, right? And so in the morning when we say, and even the first thing in the morning, you know what the prayer is? Thank you, God, for returning my soul to this physical body. So that's already how we know that when we pray, that Judaism is soul-based. And that idea, so where do we go? The idea of completion, we think life is this incredibly beautiful experience, and I hope we all do, and some don't feel that way. But Earth is hard because it does have so many challenges.
I think it's the toughest school. Could be the toughest school.
Exactly. And heaven, when we go back to God, that's fun. That could be like to complete and go, phew, I
That's dessert.
graduated. Might be a really great thing. And I can teach it, and I can coach another soul. So I do believe in that. I know that there's so much love when you feel contacted by a that voice that we talk about, or that soul from our loved one that touches us in a that love is indescribable. 3 months ago, my cousin, who was just I hadn't seen, let's see, I'm 60. I hadn't seen him in so many years, maybe since I was 14. I grew up with him, and because there was a divorce in the family, there was a family splitting apart, but I loved him. And and he and his brother, we used to play with them all the time. Had a very close relationship with them because my older sister and I were their age, but I hadn't seen them in so long. And he passed away. And over the years in Los Angeles, his son actually started to come to my synagogue. And I loved his son so much because he looked just like him. And I just grabbed him up and, brought him into my family. My kids are there, and some of my nieces and nephews. And we became very close. And he told his dad all about me. And I did speak to Barry, but called me to tell me that his father was dying and would I be available. I literally hopped on a plane. His father passed. It was just, as I said, during the fires in LA.
Oh.
I hopped on a plane. I hadn't seen them in so many years. They lived in Atlanta. And this is so strange. And as I was just on this path, like there was no question, should I go? I just went. I was going up the escalator, and I had my little bag with me. I couldn't quite get my bag to go in the right direction, and I fell backward. And all of a sudden there were these arms that just in the gentlest way caught me. And it was almost like my cousin was there to catch me. It was the weirdest thing. I can't explain it, but it was.
But they're beautiful. That's such a beautiful
It
thing.
was so beautiful and soft. And that could have been a disaster. And it would literally, the arms just felt like they fit perfectly around me. I don't know who the stranger was. Thank you. It was otherworldly.
Right. It wasn't a being behind you. It wasn't some guy catching you on the, nothing like that.
Because I just fit perfectly. It was like, oh yeah, I have that. That's why I'm doing this.
That's right.
And
Beautiful.
and I was so happy to feel that again, because when you do lose a loved one, it is a blessing to dream about them. They usually are so, I don't know if you had this experience, but every once in a while I'll see my father or somebody that I've lost, and they're radiant. They're radiant. And I think that's the truth. I absolutely, you said, my husband was a shell. They're a shell. I've been
They're
with
a sh-
people as they've passed. My father-in-law, in-laws, that shell is not.
Who they are. Their essence is no longer in that body. And when I saw Saul next to me in the car accident, his essence it was very stark to me, because everything that was the beauty of who he was through his personality, that shined through his eyes, that sparkled in his smile, it was gone. It was just a shell.
Yeah. And that is an amazing awareness and a light that goes on, that we are assured that there is something more than this. One of my students had a hard time connecting, because you have to work with words. I think one of my teachers said, well, it's your life. Like a plant has a life source, right? That they get from the sun or whatever. Our soul is our life source. And that word really worked for her. It's not this thing that's so untouchable. It's not woo-woo. It's not new age. It's very real. And it's very beautiful, and it's very connected to you. So Kabbalah, just to go back very quickly, is our way of seeing the soul as these, and these energy centers, just like the chakras, they mean something, and they represent something, and they represent, instead of having just one up your spine, these are balancing themselves, because we can't just be one thing or the other. So for example, the triangle that is at our heart, on the right side, you have chesed, which is love, unabounding love. But if you only have love, then it could turn negative. So on the left side, you have a container and a structure for love, and ways of being able to have just enough love. So it's discipline. And so when you are balancing that, it balances into the heart, which is Tiferet, which is where just that right amount pours into the heart. And those moments are brief, because we're constantly trying to rebalance. And that's our life. Struggle and balance is our life. There's no such thing as being, it's so funny. I said, if in the Torah or in the Bible, if God wanted us to just love God, why didn't he just take us to Hawaii and say, let's have a great time? Filled with struggle and overcoming that, which is kind of who you are, Irene.
We all hope to be, right? Well, we all need to be, because a lot of people don't understand or don't get it that you have these struggles, but that's not where you're supposed to stay. It's a journey, and it's just about the life journey that you have, and those are lessons, often lessons to take you. I just recently, I can honestly say, about 2 weeks ago, I had a very tough day, and I was thinking, and as I went through it, I kept saying, what lessons am I learning from this? Because there is someone in my life who's going to learn from this lesson that instead of saying, oh, what a terrible day, I'm going to tell the story to people for the rest of my life. It was a drama. No, 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 no. And it helped me to process it and get through that difficult time. And now that we're talking about Kabbalah, I know you also got into sound bowl therapy. A lot of people don't know what that is all about, and how did that help you? And I know that has to do with vibration. And if anyone has ever listened to music or whatever, it can transport you to many different places. So how does sound bowl therapy help to release and heal emotional wounds? And how do controlled breathing techniques calm the nervous system and bring a sense of peace? I know that you use both to help people.
So when I went through my divorce, I was traumatized. I was married I was married 30 years. And I thought this was it, right? And I had gone through regular therapy and you name it, I had done it. But the emotions that I felt after that, the heartbreak, the breaking away of all these layers was just excruciating. And I didn't believe in speaking therapy anymore. I just was done. And I realized that, and I found teachers who said, you can move the emotions through your body. And being a dancer and so connected to my body, I decided that I wanted those emotions to move out. Or like you had mentioned, you said the word alchemize your emotions. Because being a society that did that, between the 12-step program, between therapy, we were enmeshed in going, okay, what do I feel? How do I feel? How do I get out of the feeling? There were so many things I was taught, and I'm a really good learner. But then you can't rationalize yourself out of grief. And it does end up it has to be almost a physical thing, because your brain gets locked in place. And this is where it's interesting. You have a physical body, you have a muscular body, you have a circulatory system, and you have a bone structure. Okay, so there's all these deep systems that you're working on. And this is probably the deepest, because you start to realize that those organs and they say organic, those organs and that circulatory system are affected by outside things. And that's your nervous system. And the nervous system, when you go through trauma, freezes, just like you freeze like an animal.
I can identify.
And your brain freezes. So there's all of this, since there's been the study of neuropathy, neurology, the psychiatrists, how different drugs affect the brain. Now there's been this study to take a look at what happens to the brain during trauma. And I thought to myself, and I started to work on that level, because your brain actually changes during trauma. Now, when you breathe, you are affecting your brain, and you can feel that. And as a singer, I know that, your breath, you learn to not just breathe like that or to grab breaths, but you receive breathing. And the slower you're breathing, and I'm sure people who are athletes know this, once you hit that sweet spot, your breathing gets slow and steady, because your body's used to going like this, being at a very high frequency, and then that's when you start to hit your groove. So I'm explaining this on a couple levels so people can understand who have different frames of reference. Now, singing and vibration can be two different things. And I know that we've said, okay, so if you listen to a certain Mozart, it evokes a certain feeling. If certain music will make you feel agitated, and also beautiful music or well-composed music. But sound healing even goes beyond that, which I found fascinating, because vibration is cosmic. It goes into a universal language of planet. The cosmos is the only can explain it. And so for any of you who even saw, what was that that Richard Dreyfuss was in. What was that movie? Close Encounters of the Third.
Oh, right.
Da 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 da. Right.
Right.
So there's actually some wisdom to that, because anyone who studied music knows that there's certain sequences, like a fifth or a fourth, that is sacred. So, and what does that mean? It means it evokes something more holy in you. The crystalline bowls that I learned to play, I learned through because of COVID. It was a very isolating time, and I felt like the energy was being pressed down. And the only way that I could lift up that energy, I thought, or I started to realize, was through vibration. And these particular bowls, which are crystalline, they're thin, they are made from, they're not the big white bowls. They are infused with herbs and with certain,
Oh, they sound wonderful.
they're amazing. They're very thin. They come from a certain place, and they are infused with metals that we need in our body, and certain crystals that are used for healing. So, for example, let's just say that our heart was really in pain, and the sound coordinates to the different notes on a scale. And that's how chakras are too. And chakras are, people work with chakras vibrationally and with these bowls because it transcends the intellect, right? It's working almost on a cellular level. And cells don't think, which is a relief.
Well, the rest of us is doing it to overtime, so that's right.
Right. And so that was very freeing, right? So these bowls that are infused with it, when you hear their sound, it sounds like heaven. And I found this woman who was doing this in LA, and I got online, and there were hundreds of us from all over the world. And she is called the Copper Vessel. Her name is Susie Schifflin, who I just adore. And she has this whole community of sound healers. Well, what was amazing is I did these bowls for myself. They changed me. And then I realized, okay, my congregation, here I am taking mine up, like, whoa. But I realized people were so exhausted, and all you need to do is lay there and receive. You don't have to know what you're doing, but what it does is it affects the brain, and our bodies are also water. The water in our system, and brain waves have been measured by biofeedback, and that when we're like this, it's you and me having this chat, and we're realizing that we connect and all of that. But then when we go to the next level, it's a little slower, and this is meditation, and that allows you to go inside not with chatter, very similar to when you are underwater, I guess, and you go deeper and deeper, and you look above, and you can see the water like this. But the lower you go, the calmer it is. And that calm place is what you will get to when you meditate, but these sound bowls take you there right away.
Wow, that's fabulous. And let me ask you, when you do the sound bowl healing, I'm sure you do it in person in your synagogue and all. Do you also do it remotely, or does it work the same way?
Yes, I was shocked, but I learned this online, and I thought, I couldn't meet with people in person. Now,
I mean, that's amazing. It's online. It's happening from so far away, yet it's still, the vibration is still coming into you to help you heal.
That's what I find amazing. And your body will absorb what it needs, just like a vitamin. I was surprised because the bowls are 432 hertz. What that means is their vibration is a little bit lower than when we listen to music, because our musical systems have ramped up the vibration of music. And 432 hertz is the sound that we may not even be aware that we're hearing of the forest.
Oh, wow.
And of the beach. So that how you just feel really great when you come, it's because your body's been absorbing 432 hertz. And what happened is, years ago, all orchestras used to tune their instruments to the note A at 432 hertz. And when music became digital, it changed. And now we can't do that anymore. So if I played my bowls with an orchestra, they would sound slightly flat.
Now you just taught me something really interesting, because I grew up playing the violin, and I'm remembering that we always tuned to my violin. I would have the A, and the whole orchestra would tune to that. And I didn't know, I'm dating myself, but I didn't know that it's changed that way now.
I don't think many people know that. I find it fascinating. And yes, these bowls, what I find happens is that when you receive information from the intellect, when you go then do a sound bowl experience, it starts to drip into your entire body. Wow. So that from your experience, what you learned in that horrible crash in that moment will stay with you for life. And you have lessons that are beyond from that physical experience. I'm a real kinesthetic learner, so I have to feel things, right? And when I learn it going in fully, my full body, mind, and soul, I have lessons to teach. I don't need another book. It's there.
That's fabulous. With all of these different things that you've learned, speaking of Kabbalah and sound healing and meditation and dream work and Reiki and somatic dance. And so you have this very unique approach to personal and communal transformation based on all that, which not only does it help with physical pain, but emotional pain that includes both physical and spiritual practices for anxiety and depression. I don't know about you, but I don't know anyone with anxiety and depression in this world. I mean, really? We're all walking around with seems to be with some form of it. So how do you use all of your alchemized integrated systems to help people who come to you and they think, oh, I'm coming to a synagogue and I'm going to get, it's not your typical synagogue, and you are helping people with all these different modalities, which is so wonderful.
Thank you. I have to say, Irene, I don't just come out with everything. When I was hired by this synagogue, it's a straight Reform synagogue. And I also have been doing this for so many years. I've written 2 books, one called Minding the Temple of the Soul, and the other one called Entering the Temple of Dreams. So already these books, almost 25 years ago when I wrote them, kind of cracked open or cracked the glass ceiling of letting people know that I had a different kind of awareness that I was bringing through. And Judaism has truly become my spiritual practice, using the ancient prayers and all those things. Now I know how to use that stuff so that it does transform me and elevate me. And when I'm elevated, that's to me lifting your vibration. It's creating an energy in my body. So it's all interlinked. We're living at an incredible time where science and religion and medicine and psychology, it's all the same thing. And it's all kind of let us know that we're on the right track, because what we, again, yearn for is to know who we are and what we're meant to do here. What I have done by I've spent years trying to figure out the language and how it's not weird and how it doesn't scare people. And I don't use the modalities all the time. And sometimes I come off as a rabbi, just not bringing any of this in. I really get a sense for what people can handle and what is healing for them, because that's my job. That's what I want to do, is I want to bring a sense of comfort and healing, letting you know that you're not alone. Anyone who is out there, that isolation is worse than anything, is feeling like I'm the only one, why me? And to find out that you're not alone, wonderful. And then to be able to open up and talk about it, it's almost like you're dispersing the stuff. Like, there are compassionate people around you. Judaism, puts compassion right up front. I mean, you need to be compassionate. You need to learn what that is. And it's not just taking on everybody's stuff, right? It's being able to help transform it. So my approach depends. This synagogue, different from Los Angeles. Imagine, I didn't want to come off as being, oh, she's the California rabbi, or, but I did let them know that I had other talents than just being, a straight rabbi, just being able to daven and all those things. And I think that's what makes me a holistic leader, because I've gone through 10 years of seminary where it was pretty straight, and I can read the scripture and I know what it's saying, but I also have the ability to take it to another level. And what I learned in rabbinic school, and rabbis don't tell you this, maybe because I didn't want to let everybody know that they could understand what was being said. But when you study, you have to study on 4 levels. The first level is called Pshat. It's the story. So, for example, you study Noah and his ark. And so you have to know that story. But then there's another level called Remez. And Remez is looking at the metaphors, because a lot of the Bible, Torah, the old stories are metaphor, to start to put them together and to understand, oh, why an ark and why animal? Well,
oh, that's so interesting.
So the earth was having problems and there was no compassion for other people. And psychology today will tell you that if you want to develop compassion, get an animal. Because and think about COVID, the minute you look at a little screen with a dog, you're like, oh, your heart, it opens. And so in this cocoon, the ark was a womb, and it's
Oh,
a
wow.
creation story. And when you hear that, oh my God, it becomes very interesting. The third level is called the drash. It's kind of the story I'm telling you now, where I can put this together. And the fourth level is the sod, the secrets, Kabbalah, numerology, the little places where maybe one of the letters is bigger than the other. It's what I call the text winking at you.
Hmm.
Every time I approach a Torah portion, there's 54 of them. You do one a week. Sometimes they're doubled up. I feel like I'm in an archaeological dig. It's so much fun to like find out. There's so many brilliant teachers from the Talmud and from ancient times that were exploring all of this. That's all they did all day. And to know that ancient wisdom isn't there just to be old. It's there because, and it's not covered over by all the stuff that we experience in our world. That's my approach. And my approach is to tell the truth because there's some things I don't like in Judaism. And you also need to know that rabbis explore different laws. There's a board of rabbis that, for example, with the gay and the lesbian community, they have changed a lot of the text where it said things, that it shouldn't have said.
It was very patriarchal. I know.
Yes, very patriarchal and very anti-gay and all of that. And it's not, you have to update your Judaism. You can be buried in a graveyard if you have tattoos. That was taken from rules that are on the same level as driving on Shabbat. I am there to also break a lot of the myths that we're taught and we thought were Judaism, and they're not. It was what the rabbis wanted to tell you at a certain time.
Boy, what a blessing to be in your congregation. You must be opening up a lot of minds. I mean, I'm sure you're speaking to those they know what they know and they don't want to know anything else.
I have
right? You have those too. And they're not going there and they still think it's crazy. But you have other people, you're kind of opening a door for them and some of the light is coming in, right?
Yeah.
So that's wonderful. That
hope.
is so wonderful. So let me ask you also, you talk about the process of forgiveness. And please tell us, because a lot of people say, what is this forgiveness? I'm going to let someone off the hook. I mean, could you in your heart forgive those three men? The one especially who killed your father? What is that about?
Interesting. I also teach the months of the year and the holidays and how that is a cycle. It's a cyclical religion, and that all of those holidays are taking us somewhere, emotionally, spiritually, physically. And we learn those holidays in the different months because we are an agricultural people. So really, our calendar fits right into ancient calendar time because we also are governed by the moon. We are not people of the sun. We are guided by a moon calendar, which is very feminine.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I bring this up is because right before the high holidays, which think of them as the 12 o'clock, right, and right before, like in August, there is a holiday the week before Rosh Hashanah, which is head of the year, but it's also a spiritual moment where you are figuring out who you have to forgive. Because a week before is a holiday called Selichot.
Mm-hmm.
And at Slichot, sometimes if you go, you'll see them changing the mantles of the Torah, but Slichot means forgiveness. And it's like the trailer version saying, okay, this is what's coming up now. So start preparing. And your job at Rosh Hashanah especially is to start forgiving, because only through forgiveness comes, and we've heard this before, but the truth is it's a hard process. I mean, Maimonides, the great philosopher Maimonides and rabbi, who was a rabbi by night and by day he was a pediatrician in the Sultan. He lived in the 1100s, and in the Sultan's palace he was their pediatrician. He was brilliant.
Wow.
So a lot of the Talmud is many of his teaching. He says that if somebody comes to you 3 times and asks forgiveness, and you don't give them forgiveness, you're done, because 3 is the number of completion. And that forgiveness will come and go, but not until but the forgiveness is needed for your health, because the only one who suffers is you, who's looping the story and saying to everybody, wanting to get, like, be in a trial, and you want to be, and that's so hard to give it up, and you probably are right, and that person isn't thinking about you, and that person thinks they're right. So I find it brilliant that Judaism even created a holiday to say, like a neon sign saying, okay, This is your work. Forget getting bored in synagogue. Forget praying all those prayers. Your job is to think about maybe the 5 people who you need to forgive or who you need to ask forgiveness from, or what do you need to forgive in yourself?
So those 5 people that you have to forgive.
One, yeah.
For one, that you have to forgive. That doesn't mean that what they did is okay. It's about you letting go of it.
Yes, and it's also, that's the fears. Oh my God, you're letting them off the hook. No, it is about, and I ask people to play with a word. It's for giving to God, and that isn't just that. I haven't just said that. This is something that's many people talk about, and there's books on this, and I'm just bringing you the best. But only in that way are you going to be willing to do it, because of the fear that you're letting somebody off the hook. And it doesn't mean you have to be friends with them again. It means you come to a place, there's no more of this energy that's like angry and uncomfortable if you see them. It's this calm.
Mm-hmm.
You almost forget what happened. And forgiving isn't forgetting either. It's being wise, but it's letting go. And it's letting go of your side of the tow rope. And then they have to deal with their stuff. Because if you let go, God takes care of it. They will have their day.
But you're not going to be consumed with them. They're not going to take up all this space in your head. And then that which keeps you from having joy and being in your present moment.
Yeah, it's the stories. You end up in your stories, and no one wants to hear them after a while. Even you get sick and tired of your story.
That's right.
And the other thing is, and that's when you really give into the fact that there is some sense of justice. And I do believe that there's karmic justice, and it's also called something in Kabbalah. It's neged kemidat neged, and it means that what goes around comes around. And it's a very ancient Kabbalistic teaching to not worry about that. It's not your job to bring somebody to justice. I think that
I always say they'll get it when they cross over. When they get their life review, that will be that they will feel what they did. That will be their lesson. I don't have to wait for it to happen in this actual lifetime, that it will happen. And I have to let go of that. My thing is not to be consumed by it.
Right. I mean, even it was so interesting because I became fascinated with people who, how did people from the Holocaust forgive? How did, all of these things? And I found this incredible woman named Eva Kor forgave Mengele. She wrote,
Oh my goodness.
Had this little movie that was made. And I thought, I brought her to my congregation. Because people were angry at her. How could you forgive Mengele? How could you allow for that? And he actually, he caused the death of her twin sister. But what she taught was brilliant. And it was, until I let go, I could not live my life. And so that's a very high level. I mean, we can't all get there. And that being said, I don't know if you can forgive everything. Those boys number one did write to my mother, and I don't know if that you can forgive that. I don't know if you can forgive rape. I wouldn't say everything, and I think some things the true law has to deal with, but that churning and that letting go is crucial to our well-being. And so I believe the justice system should bring people to justice. It doesn't always do that. And I don't even know if it's doing its job anymore. I mean, I have some of my faith is being shaken, but I do think that the earth, the cosmos yearns for balance. It does. And so just on a scientific level, there has to be something that balances out, and where everybody pays their due. And the last thing I want to say is, because we go through this process every year, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and then it ends in Sukkot, that whole experience is meant to let us know, because I will say this to non-Jews, I said, Jewish people don't go to hell. Their hell is their unfinished business. Your hell is the things that you have to come clean about. And I kept secrets I had an experience where I talked about another trauma that one of my teachers was a predator in cantorial and rabbinic school. And I could not tell the story about myself for years and years. And when I started to do those bowls, it came to the surface, and I couldn't live with the secret anymore. And it was so scary. And I know that I alienated a lot of people, and I was not popular. I'm still not popular, but I don't live with secrets anymore. It made me sick inside. It made me almost suicidal. At that point, when it became so painful, I said to myself, I'm more important than that man's secret. And he's a high power. He still is. There are still, the cantorate still won't acknowledge it. And I had lawyers. I had to find my own lawyers, and they say that they're going to protect you. They don't. And it's still ongoing, and it's still something I have to let go of. But I did what I know to be true and important is I told the truth. And I don't, and for that, every day I love myself even more for
You breathe free within you, even though a lot of people in the 3D world are attacking you for your truth because you're threatening. I understand totally. So that leads me right to my big question of the rabbi. Why do bad things happen to good people? Why do we suffer and endure these challenges? Like, why did you go through that in the first place? What is all about that about? And here you're such a good person. And did you need that?
Exactly. And that's the first thing we say. And if somebody gets sick, it's not because they did anything wrong. It isn't. And if there's a tsunami, it's not because certain people have to go. I beg all of you out there who think that, no, that's not really, that's not the truth. However, just like yourself, Irene, look how you came through a tragedy that very few people could ever be the way that you are. Light, that this brilliant light that came out of you. Bad things happen to all people. I mean, that's what we have. And some people feel like they're unlucky. It's your perspective. When somebody says, oh, I just have bad luck. Well, guess what? You could look at everything as bad luck because as I said, you're not living in Hawaii with millions of dollars and you don't have the airplane to take you there. And I don't even think they're happy. Bad things happen everywhere. That was my first question. I remember right after my divorce, I went to Israel and I went, why did that predator enter my life and it caused my divorce? And, why did that have to happen? I was working for you, God, really? And I don't even want to pursue this anymore. And, my Orthodox friend who was not Orthodox growing up, she said, that's not what it's about. It isn't, God isn't doing this to you. Everybody has struggles. It's what you're going to do with this experience. We live in a world that's very black and white, and we look at people and let's say they're on the down and everyone runs away from it. I have one friend left when I got my divorce, right? Everyone thinks you're going to catch your bad luck. And let me tell you, it's just not the truth. It's just what our society does because human beings have to learn to be good people. They're not just born with that instinct. We have to learn to be spiritual people. We're animals. We are.
You're absolutely right. If you see a little toddler or they have to be taught. What is it the rabbis say if you get a child till they're 6 years old? Because you're training that little animal to be a civilized human being.
Yeah. And let me tell you, we all have to keep learning how to be civilized and kind. And not everybody gets an imprint like you did, Irene, you were imprinted. Yes, I can, when people have bad things happen, a child gets sick. I went through 2 years ago, my son got testicular cancer. I was like, okay, how many things?
How much more? Hello?
And you could probably say, Judy, I don't want to tell you how many surgeries I had or whatever. And I remember I was losing my faith. I just thought, okay, I don't want this one. This one, I'm sorry, I'm not doing it. And then I didn't even know where to turn anymore. Couldn't find a prayer. I couldn't find a way. How was I going to work with this? And I remember thinking, being literally at the last house on the block. If that's what it felt like, I had to make a choice. You either get negative and you crawl under your covers, or you start to get hope and you start to get your hands dirty and you sit with him and you walk through it. In all of that pain, you just walk through it. And it changed. I shared about it. I talked to people about it. We walked through it together. I sat at his side as he got chemo, and he's fine today. He's fine. I didn't know he'd be fine. But I have to tell you, the hard stuff is nauseating. I'm a kicker and screamer. I don't like it, but I just do it anyway. And that's what I hope there's no easy way. Irene and I sit here today on the other side of a lot. I thank God every day for that. But we're not immune. If you become a rabbi, there's no insurance package if you're a good Jew.
Or anything like that. It's just life. I like to say it's just life. And on the spiritual level, a lot of people teach that these challenges that we face is to learn lessons. And you actually learned a lesson from what happened with your son because by tuning into love and staying positive, you didn't fall apart, which was good for him. And also you found out that there was another side to it that was a brighter side. So you didn't live in the darker place.
Well, and I want to say for anybody out there, I did for a little while. I can't say that I just sprung up and was able to call on that higher self. And anybody going through depression, it isn't easy. Sometimes you need medicine. And sometimes because maybe chemically something has happened. And sometimes you might try something and it doesn't work. And I have tried, I'm one of those people, I don't give up. I probably try everything that's out there. That goes for Western, Eastern, whatever, because I'm a seeker. And I do believe, even the Bible, if you look at it, history, we look at it from hindsight. So we know we made it because we're here. And that gives me a lot of faith, believe it or not. But I'm not in those trenches. I don't know what I would feel like if I was in the Warsaw Ghetto. I don't know how positive I could be. And so I'm telling the truth because I want people to know that your rabbis or your mentors or your teachers, we only know this because we struggle that hard. And I'm telling you, Irene, I mean, she looks like a 10-year-old, but because I don't see any wrinkles in her face, but she comes from so much wisdom because she has rolled her sleeves back and gotten her hands dirty because she refuses, as I do, to give in. We want to live this life.
Actually, I have a book now. My second book is called Good to the Last Drop.
Oh.
And I have about 24 different stories of people who have been in the trenches and what they did with their lives and how they came through and how they're creating legacies now with the last chapters of their lives, So it's very much in keeping with what we're talking about,
Well,
Judy.
I can't wait to read it. Yes.
Yeah, it's a very inspiring read. Truly. And with that, you're so wonderful and you're so well spoken and articulate. And you are offering something that I think is so wonderful for the members of our audience here. I can't imagine, I would be one of the first ones making a call. Can I have that complimentary call with you? So can you tell us about your special offer for our Grief and Rebirth audience today?
Well, I think that you can look on my website and there is a consultation opportunity. It is www.rabbicantorjudy.org.
And we will also provide a link for that.
Yes, and I think
Judy,
on social media where I share many of those topics, many of the uplifting topics to let you know that you're not alone and that you have kindred spirits, you have people who want to give you strength as you walk through some of your dark times, because you do have to take a walk through them. You know, we don't want you sitting in them. You have something to offer. And
so but you're also offering a complimentary 30-minute call to anyone, right? Who wants to chat with you?
I think it's a 15-minute. I have to double
15
check.
minutes.
And I may not have the answers for you, but I certainly might. And I might be able to give you some direction. I also, my social media is Rabbi Cantor Judy, and you'll also find it on Facebook, and you'll just see Judy Greenfeld. So there's different ways of being able to tap in. And I know I have a TikTok account, same thing. Find me. And
Absolutely. And we will be providing all the information in the show notes for everyone too, because after they listen to this interview, they're going to want to give you a call. So, my pleasure. And would you like to tell people, as we draw to a close, how does tapping into a personalized spiritual or faith-based practice help a person to navigate the highs and lows of life? Why should people get involved in a spiritual or faith-based practice? How does that change their lives? And it doesn't have to, and there's so many different belief systems and all.
Yeah. I think that it's not the answer, but I do believe that whether it's faith-based or not, well, first of all, when it's faith-based, there's the hope that the highest person, it's not one person running this. God is your employer, which I think is the most important thing. But you need to find a group that you can talk to. You need to share what you're feeling. As dark as you might think it is, it has to come out of you. And also disperse, because to carry it alone will create depression and anxiety. Even just to say to someone, hey, I'm anxious today. I just want to hear your voice. That's okay. We all feel anxiety, but the idea that it humbles you and it makes you a person and just part of this world. Nobody does it alone. So I tiptoe through faith-based communities because you want to find one that is your match. They aren't all your match, but it's really important, especially after COVID, to find people be face-to-face with. I know that for myself, it has created a lot of isolation for people, and that's not healthy either.
Well, it's a form of healing is what you're talking about. Would you like to tell everyone why they should not stay in their suffering and why they should attempt to have the courage to heal their...
Yes, because we need you. If you're listening to Irene, you are filled with hope and you're filled with good stuff. And we need you to find what your true path is, because we all represent what they say, a letter in the scroll. All of our experience, strength, and hope is needed because you don't know who you're going to help. And it's needed in our world because we need a lot of choices. Different things help at different times. And so be who you are meant to be so that we get to learn about you and learn from you.
That's beautiful. And when people can be who they're meant to be, that means they've healed their backpack that they're carrying filled with suffering, would you say?
And they get to feel joy, which is what you talk
Yes.
about.
And speaking of joy, what is the Rabbi Judy tip for finding joy in life?
Yeah, letting go, letting that stuff go and finding people to share with. There's a lot of definitions and that the rabbis can give you about joy, because at certain holidays, you're commanded to feel joy. And people have said, well, I don't want to be commanded to feel joy.
I feel lousy. Why am I doing this?
And they say that our ancestors in Pirkei Avot and our forefathers taught, how do you find joy? And joy is being happy with your lot. Now, I've had people say, well, I don't like where I am and I wanted to be here and I wanted to be there. The truth is, a squirrel cannot be an elephant. Part of this is loving who you are in this moment. Whether you're feeling bad or not, you're still a beautiful being that has something to offer. And so it's really sitting with yourself. And even if you're in an uncomfortable place, to be the best person in that uncomfortable place so you can move, because you have to move. Movement's the only thing that brings health. Think of the difference between a stagnant pond and a moving stream. You must be that moving.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Judy.
Welcome.
Oh my gosh, your unique healing approach to personal and communal transformation has enhanced your mission to support others through all phases of life, guiding them towards self-discovery and shared purpose. Thank you.
Thank you
for the remarkable ways you are empowering global communities through the synergy of wellness and personal growth. And I thank from my heart for this illuminating, wisdom-filled interview on Grief and Rebirth podcast. As I like to say, and as they say in Kabbalah, to be continued.
Yes.
Thank you, Judy, and many, many blessings.
You too.
Right back. Thanks for tuning in to Grief and Rebirth. Remember, you can dive deeper into everything we've discussed by checking out the show notes and all past episodes at ireneweinberg.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Irene S. Weinberg on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and wherever you love to hang out online. Plus, we're on YouTube, so be sure to subscribe and never miss a video. For those of you listening, you'll find links to my 2 books, Good to the Last Drop and They Serve Bagels in Heaven, in the show notes. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see those books listed right above, so don't miss out. And here comes a special treat. If you sign up for Audible as a first-time user using my link, which you can find in the show notes, you can get They Serve Bagels in Heaven for free. And finally, people often ask me what I read, what I use, and what I recommend for healing and self-care. So I've carefully curated a compilation of those items to share with you. You can head over to kit.co/Grief and Rebirth to check them out. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, many blessings.